Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and you're all very welcome to this morning's webinar. We're delighted to welcome you to the 42nd webinar in our Irish Bioenergy Association webinar series. My name is Sean Fine. I'm the CEO of the Irish Bioenergy Association, and we're delighted to present this morning's webinar on the EBA, the European Biogas Association Statistical Report 2023, where the report highlights the significant growth in European biomethane production in 2022. Before we introduce our speaker and our topic this morning, just a very small brief introduction to the Irish Bioenergy Association. We were established in 1999 as the representative body for the Irish bioenergy industry on the island of Ireland. We cover the areas of biomass, biogas, biofuels, biochar, wood fuels, and energy crops. Our main work is in the area of policy, lobbying, and advocacy, and knowledge transfer. And we have a broad and diverse membership, which includes farmers, foresters, and those involved in various different small and medium enterprises, technology providers across all the bioenergy sectors, consultants, semi-state organizations, indeed fuel suppliers, and a wide variety of other interested parties in the bioenergy sector. We also roll out a number of research and development projects, and you can find out more information on our website, www.rbia.org. Would like to point out to you this morning that we have launched a fact sheet series back in 2022, and we're adding to this series. And the most recent fact sheet we have published is the one on the support scheme for renewable heat, which is administered by the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland on behalf of the Government of Ireland. So if you would like to check out our fact sheets, or indeed if you'd like physical copies of them, please do get in touch. But they are available online through our website, and they are as a resource to be utilised by you or anyone that would like to use them for information purposes. In terms of our webinar series, we've covered a wide, diverse range of topics. We have had a break for the last probably 4 to 5 months, but we're reconvening in 2024 again, and this is kind of the first webinar that we're holding for a while. So we're delighted to welcome you back this morning to this webinar. As you can see, the topics have been varied, and they're all available on our YouTube channel and our website if you'd like to look back at any of the topics. We started this series back in 2020 in the height of COVID, and have continued it since. Our next webinar will be webinar number 43. We do intend to progress fortnightly on Wednesdays in 2024 for the foreseeable future, depending on interest and topics. Full details will be published through our social media channels and communications channels. As I said, you can find a full list of all our webinars on our website, and also the link to the fact sheets is there. So I thank you for joining. I hope you find this morning's webinar very useful, and we look forward to it. So to introduce that, Mieke Decorte from European Biogas Association will deliver a presentation. She is the technical executive, and that will be followed by a discussion with our own technical executive, Noel Gavigan, plus Q&A. If you have any questions on the report, feel free to put them in through the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, and we will endeavour to answer as many of your questions as possible. So introduce our speaker. So Mieke is a technical and project manager at the European Biogas Association since 2021, joining the organisation in 2018. Mieke manages and coordinates the technical and policy work within the EBA and supports the EBA policy and communications work with technical knowledge and data. And her main responsibilities are the Horizon Europe and other programs and overseeing the technical publications. And I would like to compliment the EBA on this statistical report, and indeed all the technical reports which they publish on an annual basis. There's some great work on this. Great work has gone into this report, and it's a very valuable resource. So well done to the EBA on that. Mieke has earned technical and market knowledge on the biogas sector through her work at the Flanders Biogas Association, and she graduated in 2006. Graduated as a bioengineer with specialization in environmental technology. So it's over to you, Mieke. So thanks very much again for joining us, and we look forward to your presentation. So I'll stop sharing now, and hopefully you'll be able to share your screen. And you're on mute.
Thank you very much for the introduction.
If you have difficulty sharing, I can share, but yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so
we can see your notes as well, Mieke, now, just so if you want to go back to the original view. Yes, that's the presentation view. So we can see you there now. So perfect. Over to you. Thank you very much. You're on mute now.
okay, thank you for this opportunity to present the EBA statistical report, and thank you for the introduction. So indeed, I'm the technical manager of the EBA, which means I'm in charge of the data collection and the technical knowledge that goes out of the EBA. And one of the big publications that we have every year is our EBA statistical report, which summarizes biogas and biomethane production data in Europe, but also many other figures. And I'm happy to give, let's say, an introduction of what type of information can be found in the report. So first, a few words on the EBA. So we are the European Biogas Association. We cover both biogas and biomethane, and we cover the whole biogases value chain in Europe. We have at the moment almost 300 members in total, of which we have a bit more than 240 companies, which are of all parts of the value chain. We also have 48 national associations covering 35 European countries. So what is in my presentations today? So I will start with the biogases production volumes in 2022. Then I will give some words on the growth rate and the biomethane target. So basically what we call achieving the 35 BCM target. And then I also included some slides on digestate potential to replace synthetic fertilizers. So to start with the first part. So how is our report, or let's say, start with some introduction on what is the scope of our report and what is the methodology of EBA's database. So in terms of geographical scope, the data covers EU27, but also 6 other European countries. In terms of data input, we collaborate a lot with our national biogas associations in the EBA, but the data also comes from national statistical reports and industry stakeholders representing the respective countries. We combine it with information from the biomethane map, the European biomethane map that we develop as well each year, and also from white papers and European research projects. Then some notes on the graphs and the statistics. So the figures that I will be presenting today, they cover data until the end of 2022. And in terms of bio-CNG and bio-NG, we count them towards our biomethane statistics. Then some definitions. With BCM, we always refer to natural gas equivalents. So also in terms of biogases, this is always in terms of natural gas equivalent. So it's not, let's say, the case that you still need to consider the around 40% of carbon dioxide. This is already considered. For biogas, we refer to raw non-aggregated gas originating from anaerobic digestion. And with biogases in plural, we mean combined biogas and biomethane. So first, I want to put a bit the framework of Europe that we are in at the moment and to give a bit of context. So in terms of fossil fuel subsidies, in 2022, we spent more than 120 billion euros on this. And this was, more than double. So an increase of 120% relative to the year before, to 2021. And this, as you can imagine, was a crisis response to the energy crisis that we had. And a big part of this budget went to the protection of EU consumers, both to households and for industries. So around 200, a bit less than 200 billion euros was spent in 2021, 2022, with more than 230 temporary national measures implemented in the EU to protect EU consumers. Then on the right side, we see in terms of gas imports also a very big increase on the spendings that we had in Europe. In 2022 amounted to more than 300 billion euros. To give an idea, this is more or less half of the total energy import bill that we have in Europe is spent on gas imports. Then to put it in, let's say, in comparison with renewable subsidies, we are around 87 billion euros, and this was a slight increase compared to the year before. So indeed, you could see that we spent a lot of our budget on imports of gas, and this is also reflected in the volumes. So in terms of total gas imports, this amounts to 342 BCM in the EU, and this is in 2021. This was 83% of our gas that we consumed, but in 2022 this increased to 97% of the EU natural gas consumption in the EU was imported. And you can see on this graph shows the imports of selected energy projects, and the light blue one is referring to natural gas, and you can see that that, let's say, over the last 3 decades, this volumes have doubled. Then when so the previous slide was the importing of energy project. This one is the production of energy that we have in the European Union. And you can see that for most fuels, we have a long-term downward trend, except for renewables, which are increasing a lot. And you can see that since 2016, this is the green line. The renewables were the biggest, let's say, production share of our energy in Europe. So then let's move to the actual EBA data. So what you see here, it's the let's say the development of biogas and biomethane production in Europe in the last 10 years. In 2022, Europe produced 21 BCM of biogases. And you can see in the lighter color, it's biogas, and in the darker color, it's biomethane. So you can see that the biggest part of the growth is situated in the biomethane part. To give you an idea, 21 BCM, this is more than the gas amount of Poland. So this is a considerable volume. And it also equals 6% of the EU gas consumption. 20% of the biogases in Europe are upgraded to biomethane, and out of the 21 BCM, 18 BCM was produced in the EU 27. Then we zoom in a bit more on biomethane. So whereas the previous graph showed combined biogas and biomethane, this one is zooming in on biomethane production. So in 2022, we had 4.2 BCM of biomethane production in Europe, of which 3.4 was in the EU 27. And in terms of installed capacity, we are already a bit higher at 4.5 BCM. The production has doubled since 2018, from 2.1 to 4.2 BCM, so in 4 years' time. And last year, in 2022, we saw an 18% year-on-year increase of biomethane production. The biggest growers in Europe are at the moment France, Italy, Denmark, and the UK. Then we move towards the number of biomethane plants. So again, in 2022, we had a record number of new biomethane plants installed. So this actually means that we can also anticipate for 2023 to have a big increase in production because all those plants will be up and running in 2023. So we had more than 250 new plants in 2022. And in total, we are now more than 1,300 biomethane plants, with around 1,100 of them being in the EU27. There are 24 countries at the moment which are producing biomethane, and you can see actually that every year new countries are joining biomethane production and are putting forward their first plants. 75% of the plants are grid connected, and most are connected to the distribution grid. Moving to the next part, we can take some questions here if this is useful, and otherwise I will continue with the next part of this slides. So the next section is about achieving the 35 BCM target, growth rate, and biomethane targets. So what we have put on this graph, you can see in the upper line, the lightest color, it's the growth which we would need from 2022 towards 2030 to achieve the 35 BCM target. For this, we would need a growth of around 30% every year. And then you see in, let's say, the darkest color, it's the average growth rate of the last 5 years. And in the middle line, you see the growth rate that we have at the moment that we had in 2022. So I would say the good news is that biomethane production is already accelerating, and you can actually also see this on the previous graphs that I already showed. But there is still some room to speed up, and we still need to implement additional measures to actually achieve this 35 BCM target. And one important pillar of in accelerating the production is planning. And in terms of planning, a very important instrument that we have in Europe is the governance of the energy union. So this includes a legal requirement to develop national energy and climate plans, so the NACPs, to outline climate and energy goals. The expectations that we have from December 2022, so the European Commission provided a guidance to encourage including a component on biogases and biomethane in the NACP updates. In June 2023, so this year basically, there was a deadline for the NACP updates. And in November, so last month, we saw that 22 NACPs were submitted. So there are still 5 of them pending. So what we have done in the EBA, we have made an analysis on checking into this NACPs, which ones are actually including a biomethane target, which ones are including a biogas target. And then also we have some countries such as Ireland actually that they have put forward a biomethane target, but it is not yet included in the NACP. And this is what we call a pre-NACP target. So we see that of the NACP submitted, actually 10 countries, they include a biomethane target. Then we have 6 more countries in Europe which do have a biomethane target in a national strategy or a roadmap, but it's not, let's say, transferred yet to the NACP. Then there are 5 more countries which have a biogas only target in NACP. And then we have 6 countries that at the moment do not yet have a biomethane or a biogas target. And those ones are Belgium, Bulgaria, Germany, Hungary, Portugal, and Romania. So here on the left table, you see the NACPs or the countries which have an NACP with a 2030 biomethane target included. And you see there that there are we have Italy with a high target. We also have France with a high target. So Italy 5.7, France also more than 4 BCM targets for biomethane in 2030. And then the Netherlands, we have 2 BCM, and Denmark 1.8, which I would say are the countries with the highest targets at the moment. And then on the left-hand side, we have what we call the pre-NACP target. So a target has already been put forward, but not yet in the NACP. And this is where Ireland falls, basically. So when we count the biomethane targets together in the NACPs, we arrive at 15 BCM with another 3.4 BCM of, let's say, other targets already put forward. So then we have a simple, let's say, methodology in the EBA where we, let's say, calculate an anticipated 2030 biomethane production that we know of at the moment. So for this, for each country, either we took the NACP target, if one is there. If not, we went to the pre-NACP target. And if there is no pre-NACP target as well, then we went to the current biomethane production. And with this, let's say when we calculate everything together, we arrive at 20 BCM of anticipated 2030 biomethane production. And I would say the good news is that many countries have already taken on board the recommendation of the Commission to include a biomethane target. But we also see in the next 6 months, when we will be finalizing the NACPs, there is still room for improvement, and there's still opportunity to either increase the targets or for the countries that do not have yet one to actually include this. The map on the right-hand side is summarizing this overview. It's also a map that is included in our report. So you can see in the green. So you can see a box for each country, and the green part shows the potential of the biomethane potential of the country estimated by the Gas for Climate study. Then the middle, the lighter yellow box shows the pre-NACP targets if existing, and the darker yellow shows the target that is included in the NACPs, just to put these different values next to each other for each country. Then moving forward, I have also included some information on our investment outlook for biomethane. So in spring, EBA has launched a voluntary survey to investors in biomethane let's say to ask what is the planned investment in biomethane plants in the coming 7 years, so up until 2030. And we aggregated that at the moment almost 18 billion euros is planned to invest in biomethane by 2030. And we see even a faster pace taking place in the second part of this decade. This is very, let's say, encouraging, also considering that this information is not even complete because it's, of course, a selection of investors who have replied to this questionnaire. And we will be repeating this exercise in spring next year. Then I will conclude with some information on digestate potential to displace synthetic fertilizers. First, as an introduction, apart from that, Europe is dependent on its for its gas consumption on imports. We are also to some extent dependent on imports of fertilizers, of synthetic fertilizers. And you can see on the left-hand side, you can see the EU27 imports of synthetic fertilizers. So we had 6 megaton of NPK, 11 megaton of nitrogen, and 7 megaton of phosphate. And then on the right-hand side, you see how this compares to our consumption of fertilizers in EU27. So this is around 30% of our nitrogen fertilizers, almost 70% of our phosphorus fertilizers and 85% of our potassium fertilizers. So what we have done in our report, and it's described in detail. We have made a calculation on how much of the synthetic fertilizers that we could replace with a digestate if we apply it in a correct manner. So first, we have estimated the total the total digestate production produced in Europe in 2022, which is calculated as 31 megaton of dry matter. And then we made some calculations on what is the content, the nutrient content of the digestate, and how much synthetic fertilizers we could replace. And with this, we arrive at the moment at 15%. So in 2022, at 15% of the nitrogen-based, 11% of the phosphorus-based fertilizers, and 6% of the potassium, which are actually quite high percentages if you consider that if we can increase biogas and biomethane production, this can also further increase. We also made a calculation on what is the carbon dioxide equivalent that could be saved or could be avoided by not needing to produce this amount of synthetic fertilizers. And this, we arrive at 10 megaton of carbon dioxide equivalent. And then, of course, when you produce synthetic fertilizers, you also need natural gas for this production. So by avoiding this production of synthetic fertilizer, you will also avoid the usage of natural gas. And for this today, we arrive at 2 BCM of natural gas that can be avoided by using digestate instead of synthetic fertilizers. With this, I am concluding, let's say, the presentation part from my side, but of course open for any questions and to discuss further. For EBA members, our full report is available on the EBA net, and I have also included the QR code for, let's say, for external parties to purchase the report. Okay, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mieke, for your presentation. And I have read your report, and there's a lot of very interesting information and data within the report. If I could also ask Noel to maybe turn on your camera. So Noel is our technical executive of the Irish Bioenergy Association. So I would encourage any of you that have any questions to please put them in through the Q&A tab. Maybe if I could just start with you, Noel, maybe just to give Mieke a chance to catch her breath after the presentation. What would your own comments be in terms of the European scenario, in terms of biomethane production? And I'll come back then to Mieke after that to maybe just summarize briefly, if you could, Mieke, the Irish figures, currently the number of plants and that. I think so Noel first, if you could.
Yeah, so good morning all. So I suppose first off, congratulations again to the EBA, to Mieke and our colleagues. We had one of our colleagues, Anna Venturini, speak at our conference in October, and again outlined some previous figures, but these updated figures from EBA are always very valuable for the likes of ourselves, to show the different policy measures and to show how the industry is developing across Europe. So it's always very valuable information for us, and thanks very much for that. I suppose that the critical ones there that really jump out, just standing back from the report a little bit, are, first of all, a general figure of that 41% of all EU energy coming from renewables. That's very encouraging. We're quite behind that ourselves in Ireland, but it's good to see it from an EU context, getting those sorts of numbers. The biomethane production has doubled over the past 5 years. That is also very encouraging, up to, is it 4.2 billion cubic meters. So it's a substantial increase, and it shows where the industry is moving towards biomethane. I've noticed in the same time period, almost practically no increase in other use of biogas. So, our larger scale plants are all going for biomethane, and that's where, as a fuel resource, it's got its better value. So that in itself is very useful to have. And again, it's good in the report to focus in on the digestate use. I mean, we are in nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium are vital for food production. And to see the levels of recycling that's going on there, nutrient recovery, I think it was 15% and 11% and 6. So getting those sorts of figures back, we'd love to see more and more of that, especially from an agricultural context. And it's a very valuable resource that we need to be conserving, especially the P and K, which are mined products and are exhaustible products. So the more of those we can recycle, the better and recover. So, and I suppose that from an Irish context, then I suppose the one standout that comes in this report is obviously we have a pre-NECP target, our National Energy and Climate Plan. So it's not fixed. We are expecting an announcement on that at some point, but really and truly, I suppose, in order for us to achieve what's going on in Europe, we're going to see more concrete targets and more concrete supports, akin to what we've seen in other parts of Europe, if we are to meet the targets that are set out.
Okay, thanks very much, Noel. And if I could bring you back in, Mieke, then I know that the report notes that there's 43 biogas plants in Ireland. Do you want to just briefly explain maybe the very high level figures from an Irish context?
Yes, I think the main difference between maybe other figures that are being published in Ireland is that let's say our data includes both agriculture biogas plants, bio-waste plants, but also, for example, landfill and sewage plants, which is increasing the number of plants in Ireland and also let's say the production.
Yeah, so I think just on that, it breaks down just roughly in terms of sewage plants. You're talking about something, just looking at a chart here, maybe about 13. You're talking about the vast majority, or over half of the plants would be in the landfill, so they would be capturing landfill gas. So you're talking about maybe 16 to 17 plants in that category, and then the remainder are waste-based plants. So you're talking about 13 to 15 plants in that category. So that just gives an outline. And I think the figures that you had in the report was that Irish biomethane production has grown in 2022 from 5 gigawatt hours to 41 gigawatt hours between 2021 and 2022. And that's probably as a result of the injection point at Cush becoming being utilized, being commissioned, being utilized, and that material finding its way into the system. If I could bring you back in, Noel, then in terms of the Irish opportunity that exists, could you maybe talk about that, please?
Yeah, there's an outline there on one of the presentations in terms of our potential as opposed to our target. And, just give it an European.
0.76 is our potential.
So, 0.7 on the map, and it's 0.7.
Yeah.
But in terms of our target being 0.58 billion cubic meters, so our target is very close to our overall potential. So it is a challenge. We've talked about that at a national level, that we are looking at potentially about 200 plants would need to be built. There is definitely a question at this point. It'll be starting 2024. Are we going to reach that target of having 200 plants being built by 2030 is a major challenge. And it would definitely need to, I wouldn't hand in the towel on it, but what I would say is we are definitely going to need to see some very concrete supports and strong supports in the next year been rolled out and in place if we're going to get to that level, because there's quite a lot of putting together a biogas plant is not an easy thing. Putting together 200 is a huge challenge, and there is going to be need to be strong actual support in terms of numbers, in terms of financial support for these to happen.
Just a question there, Mieke, just on the investment. You had a slide on the investment and the potential there. So I suppose the question is here, is that investment more global, or is it European-based investment, or what does that look like? Or maybe you don't have that specific information.
Yes, you can see actually when you check our briefing on this, you can see a breakdown. So basically the investors are European, but in some cases investments take place indeed outside Europe, because as you know, European is in the lead globally on, let's say, on the technology and on the knowledge base that we have on biogas and biomethane production. So this means that European investors are actually also getting assets outside Europe. But from what we see from the data that we got, most of the investments take place inside Europe.
Okay, and just a question there from Owen then, about the drivers of the doubling of biomethane production over recent years to 4.2 BCMs. How do countries subsidize or incentivize new production? So do you want to just expand on that, Mieke?
Yes, I would say at the moment we can see two different streams on how to support biomethane production. You can see that the countries that are at the moment starting biomethane production with their first plant, they often have production support type systems such as feed-in tariffs and feed-in premiums. But at the same time, you can see that some of the markets in Europe that are more mature, let's say such as France, the Netherlands, Denmark, they are moving towards support schemes which are more demand-based. So they are moving towards putting a target, putting a mandate, and let the market work there as well.
And I know that Denmark, I think they were considering a contract for different style support schemes. So the support schemes vary depending on the member state in which you in which country you sit. And obviously in Ireland, it is the current biogas plants that have supported through the Refit 3 program from Electricity. Noel, do you want to explain that briefly in terms of how the current Irish plants are supported and what that support looks like currently?
Well, yeah, it's an older support. The Refit 3 is ended for application 6 or 7 years ago at this stage. So it's a grandfathered scheme at this point in time, and a number of those plants in it are halfway through their 15 years or gone past halfway through their 15 years support. So they will be coming out by 2030 and maybe be looking at biomethane at that point. So that support it's the only support that was available. And we don't as yet have a follow-up scheme, whether it's for biomethane or anything else. So apart from the renewable heat, this support scheme for renewable heat, which does give a small amount, but it's not enough to subsidize a plant. So
and no, just on that, sorry to cut across you, but just on the Refit 3,
yeah,
I think there's lessons in that in terms of the level of support that was available, and then the types of feedstocks which those plants actually utilized in order to make them economically viable. So just, do you want to expand on that?
yeah, and it's something we could definitely learn from the expertise of Bioenergy Europe, Mieke and our colleagues on it as well. I mean, the critical thing on the Refit 3 was the level of support was just too small. It was just below the economic level, and as a result, only a very small number of plants were built. Initially, we were looking at having about 60 megawatt hours of plants built, or sorry, 60 megawatt of capacity of plants built. And it ended up being, I mean, I don't know if we've achieved 6 meg overall. So it was substantially less than what is originally anticipated, because the level of support was not high enough. And the danger we have here in Ireland, because we don't have an existing system, biogas industry, it'd be very interesting to hear in terms from Bioenergy Europe, or sorry, European Bioenergy Association, where are we looking at gas supply going into a country back from one region to another, because definitely there is extra capacity in some countries. In Ireland, we have very little. So how do we, first of all, that leaves us in a bit of a dilemma. Could people buy in renewable gas into Ireland cheaper than producing it here because there's plants existing in other countries? And that is why we need to see a support that's specific to Ireland and specific to regions in Europe that don't have biogas plants to start off with, so that we can get that base investment. Because if the support isn't high enough, it's not going to, your investors just will not, it's not interesting to our investors. It doesn't make
And
financial
that
sense.
support influences the type of feedstocks used in as well, because
Yes.
so for those plants that are currently operating in Ireland in terms of producing electricity, what's their feedstocks? No.
Well, look, most of them, they're all waste. So
Okay.
there's
And
going to
they're
be,
getting a gate fee.
yeah,
Most of them
yeah.
are
Yeah, so
operating that way.
their feedstock price is zero or often a gate fee. Whereas if
Okay.
we're to get to this 0.58 billion cubic meters, we are going to need to be using crop material. Really, in Ireland, we're talking about grass, possibly maize. And these are materials which cost money and they have to be paid for. So
And that
the
changes the
cost,
economics overall.
absolutely, yes.
Okay. And Mieke, just a question in there again. I think we have answered Owen's question in terms of the incentives. So really the incentives and supports vary depending on the member state and the maturity of the market. But I think the key message is that incentives are a key driver of the development of the sector. Question then in Denmark is seeking to achieve 100% biomethane on its grid. Is the investment being supported by government or is it purely private investment? So it's quite specific, and I'm not sure if you have an answer for that, but we can endeavor to answer that.
So when we are talking about our investment outlook, these are private investments, so it does not include the investments by the government. And by the government, this can be in the form of either a support scheme in terms of capex support, but also in terms of investments in infrastructure. So this is not yet included in our investment outlook. To the situation in Denmark specifically, I would say that the Danish government have been supporting biomethane, but at the same time, you can see that now more and more plants are being built without using the support system from the government. So this is also an evolution that we see, and we can see something similar in the Netherlands as well.
Yeah, I do. There was a presentation at a conference in Ireland back earlier this year, and I think the Danish government has the intention, though, of introducing a new support scheme after their existing one exits or it comes to its end. But it could, but I guess there will be some people probably mightn't avail of that, and others that will. But support in the past have certainly been a key driver of the investment there. So another question there, Noel, in terms of the feedstocks for Ireland, what do we see as the opportunity and potential for various different feedstocks at an Irish level in terms of biogas stroke biomethane production? So I think you might have partly covered that already, but you want to explain further the broadness of and potential in Ireland.
Well, I suppose each region in Europe, you have to look at what do we grow best. In Ireland, that's really grass. And feeding a biogas plant, it's quite similar to looking at high merit animals. You want high DMD material. So if we nearly follow the model of what dairy farmers are doing, you're looking for a high quality grass, high quality maize, triticale, these and whole crop wheats, things like that, which may be useful as well. But we're looking at how do we produce that material in bulk at the lower cost. And look, our climate suits grass very well. We have a lot of our ground is not tillable. So for a lot of regions where we're looking at biogas plants, I think grass is going to be the key one. So we'd be a little bit unique in Europe in that context, where we see a lot of maize plants around Europe. Here we're really going to be looking at what we grow best, and that is grass.
And
So
in combination with other feedstocks, is that
well, absolutely, yeah. Well, like we will put
so it's a
in
combination of feedstocks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like each plant will work on its own economics, but obviously waste materials is good to get in. Animal waste materials can be quite bulky compared to the volume of gas you get out. So, but it can help the overall emission portfolio of the plant. So there's a lot of work to be done in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions calculated and real in terms of growing a crop and putting into a biogas plant. So with to ensure that we are doing that sustainably and that we're getting the correct. I mean, the bottom line on this is the Renewable Energy Directive, which sets out parts or version 2 and 3, which set out very clear criteria on the level of greenhouse gas reduction that we must have for something to be considered renewable. So, Mieke, I think is it going to 80% for biogas under RED 3, I think as time goes on. But we need to get that be able to show by calculation, by verification, that if we're putting grass into a biogas plant, we're getting that 80% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions compared to the fossil fuel it's replacing. But it's also,
Okay.
as in that report, we should be counting in the fact that if we're replacing or reducing the need for a certain and recovering nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium from waste materials, food waste, and the like, that has an implication in terms of greenhouse gas emissions as well. It reduces them considerably and that should be counted. So it's about, and that's one of the complications of biogas plants. There's so many different things going on there. It's trying to quantify them all, and taken as a whole, they make a lot of sense. But sometimes if you're just looking at it from one economic model, be it just to produce energy, it can be a little bit more difficult.
Okay, just a question there. It's kind of related to this. Are we on a collision course with the EU to prioritise grass stroke maize when RED 3 seems to be moving away from this? What's the EBA view on feedstocks? So do you want to come in there, Mieke, on that, just in terms of the feedstock potential?
Yes, so what we see as a trend on the European level is that we move towards we are moving towards mainly towards agricultural residues, but we're also seeing increase in amount of biomethane plants on bio waste and also from sewage sludge, for example. So we see there move away from maize, from grass. I would say it really depends also on the national situation and on the agriculture systems in place. We do see now with a new version of the Annex 9 of the Renewable Energy Directive that some types of intermediate crops will be included in Part A of the Annex. So this means they will be more incentivized. So I'm sure some of the agriculture systems that Noel was highlighting, that they will also be encouraged further indeed.
Okay, Noel, do you want to comment on that as well? I think it's important to maybe explain in an Irish context the potential for grass. You've explained that, but how it will be in combination with slurries and how that combination is important from the point of view of the sustainability renewable energy directive and the sustainability mix and also the emission reduction mix. So do you want to maybe just further explain that in the context of Ireland around the grass piece? And
well, yeah, I mean, we need to be able to produce our cubic meters of biomethane as low an emission as possible. So if you're looking at a grass crop going in, the emissions you have to consider are the vehicles used to harvest that grass, the fertilizers used to fertilize it if it's not all fully recycled from the plant, and transport emissions from bringing material. All of that has to be included. And that is going to be, the emission is going to be higher when you're looking at a tilled crop, such like maize or whole crop wheats or triticale or something like that. So you do have a higher emission there, and it may well fall outside the scope of RED 3. But these are things that we need to clarify, and it is a question here for Ireland, because grass generally is something that doesn't need maintenance apart from lime and fertilizer. And if we are going out and just harvesting it to go into a biogas plant, the view would be that the emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions overall should be a lot less. In particular, if we're looking at displacing livestock on that land, on certain places, parts of the country. But I think it's a real thing that we have to get a concrete figure on in the next number of years, because there's different systems. Some will fall outside RED 3. Some, if we're looking at high intensity grass production, it's going to be difficulty. There's talk of mixing swards, putting in other things in there. Now, there has been up to maybe perhaps putting in certain clovers, but they're high in protein, so that causes you difficulty in the operation of the plant. So, but these are all things that we need to work out over the next couple of years. Definitely it makes.
But sustainability is key, and that renewable energy directive achievement is key, obviously, for the fuel to be classified as renewable. Otherwise, it's and just I
look,
suppose
the RED 3 is excellent in terms of, if it's not right, it'll be improved in a RED 4. But it's the best attempt the EU has made, and it's quite a good, solid, honest attempt at how do we look at all our different systems, ensure that they're 100% renewable, or they're at a high level of renewability, and they're not affecting sensitive ecosystems.
But again, going back then to your point, the economics, you have to pay farmers to produce grass. So that has a significant impact on the economics of the biomethane production in terms of the cost per cubic meter produced. And then a key element of the sustainability as well is that it's a recycled system which where digestate has gone back on the land to produce that grass, and the chemical fertilizer is excluded completely from the mix. Chemical nitrogen is excluded from the mix in terms of growing that grass. Question in there, and maybe if I go to Mieke on this one and Noel as well, maybe come in on this one after that. Which sectors do you see the biomethane being supplied to or used by? So is it electricity generation, is it heat, or is it transport, or is it across all three? So I don't know,
I can
yeah,
jump in for the European level. So in this edition of our report, we did the first, let's say, division of biomethane use in Europe. We made a bit of different categories. So we have power generation, then we have transport, buildings, and industry. And what we actually see is that the share of where biomethane is being used, it's quite well distributed among the different end users. And this is because some choices are made on the member state level, and whereas some countries they have a preference for transport, for others it will be power or industry or buildings. And overall in Europe we see yes, we see this let's say equal, more or less equal distribution between the different end users, and this also shows how versatile a biomethane is. So you can use it for different types of purposes.
Okay, Noel, do you want to comment on that as well in terms of the actual use for the biomethane?
Yeah, I'd agree with Mieke. I mean, it's once you're into biomethane, you have a variety of uses. You know, there's it can go into any of those three uses. I suppose there is a focus that we look at say high-end heat where they're hard to decarbonize. Should the biomethane be more pushed towards that, or heavy goods transport where it's difficult to decarbonize, and possibly electricity generation in terms of grid support. You know, we see solar and wind doing huge work across Europe, and in Ireland we see wind being substantial, but we've massive dips. So how do we fill in that? If we're going to 2050, we look at net zero, we're going to need to see some way of generating electricity during those Dunkelflaut periods, as we're calling them, where we don't have the renewables at a high level. So the intermittent renewables at a high level. So yeah, but as Mieke said, it's a very versatile product, so we can use it as an energy source in many ways.
Just a comment in here as well for you guys. Thanks, Noel, for that. In terms of your slide, Mieke, in terms of the draft NECP targets, Ireland 0.5 BCM, 5.7 terawatt hours. It seems high compared to the targets which other European countries have, where they already have established markets. So just kind of, would you have any comment on that? That the Irish target seems considerably high considering the low base that we have and starting out from, and whereas there's a lot of the other European markets are very established, have support mechanisms in place, have plants being constructed, and their targets aren't significantly greater than the Irish one from the perspective of delivery. So do you want to comment on that maybe, or any feedback on that?
I would comment,
or maybe Noel as well.
Go ahead.
Maybe I would want to compliment on what Noel mentioned earlier, that indeed the target of Ireland, it's that it's close to the let's say to the potential, but the potential that is displayed on this map, I did not mention it very clearly, but this is the 2030 potential. So this means that the total potential of the country is higher, but as terms of the total technical potential, we have put this as 2050. And in terms of what is achievable by 2030, it's what we call the 2030 potential, and this is what is displayed on this map. So in this sense, For me, the target that is put forward at the moment for Ireland, it's a reasonable and a good ambitious target.
Okay. Noel, do you want to comment on that as well? Just on that question comment that came in there about the Irish target and how it fits when you compare it, like, I guess the person is referring to the fact that the Danes have only a 1.8 BCM, but they have an established sector, whereas ours is probably a third of that, but we have no industry or supply chain. So do you want to just comment on that maybe?
Well, I suppose we're starting very, very late. Really, we've a lot of development to do. And again, our target is to build 200 plants in the next 6 years. It's a mammoth task, and that's really is a challenge. But Mieke, again, clarifying that fact that it's 2030 potential is written into that. It does, that it is something that can be done, but we're not seeing, I suppose, the actions happening in the last 3 years. I mean, these targets, we had a 1.6 target for some time now, and that's in terawatt hours, going to 5.7. And what the actions we need to see in terms of support over the past 2 to 3 years to get us to 2030 haven't happened yet. And we're fast running out of time.
Okay, there's a comment in there maybe, and it's a simple question. 2013 is only a couple of years away. Will we meet the target, yes or no? So I guess that's a difficult question. We are expecting the biomethane strategy. We know the indications are now that it will be published in the new year. We did expect it in Q3 and then in Q4. But really, it's a difficult question to answer. So if the strategy comes out with detailed measures in terms of financial mechanisms and incentives as to how the sector is going to be developed, then that will put us a long way on the road towards moving this potential which exists forward into actual plans. But I would suggest that if the strategy doesn't contain that detail and that information, then achieving the target which has been set out would be quite difficult, because obviously there will be incentive supports and measures needed. Perhaps as a final comment, I'll ask you, Noel, first, and then I go to Mieke. Just, do you think the Irish target could be achieved, and what is required in order to achieve that? And maybe just answer that question. So, Noel, maybe just as your concluding comment, because we've come to the end.
Yeah, it can be achieved, but we need to be seeing the strategy laid out in 2022, not 2024, to do that.
Okay, and Mieke, do you want to just have a final comment, maybe referring to that, but generally, just before we close?
Yes, I would say the most important part of the target is to put the ambition there, and is to give a clear political sign and certainty to investors that this is the way that the country wants to move, both on the national but also on the European level. In terms of the European target of 35 BCM, we see that with the ambitions that have put forward at the moment, we would arrive at 20 BCM. So we do see that additional steps will be necessary next year and the years thereafter to further step up towards the 35 BCM.
Okay, well, on that note, we await the strategy in Ireland, and we look forward to reading that when it comes out and to see what exactly it says. But for now, I'd like to thank you, Mieke, for attending this morning and presenting. Thanks to Noel as well. I'd like to also thank all of our attendees this morning. We had quite a diverse audience this morning. I would like to acknowledge, Mieke, you delaying the start of your Christmas holidays to participate with us this morning. So that's very, very thank you for that. I'd like to also thank Teresa O'Brien, who helps get these webinars up and running and make sure everything works as it should behind the scenes. So thanks, Teresa, for your assistance. So we look forward to welcoming you back in the new year on our next webinar. I'd like to wish you all a very happy Christmas and a prosperous new year. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon. So we'll leave it at that, and thanks very much again.